Coming up, a bunch of huge individual scoring nights from KD, Tatum, and Booker. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I am your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. We are ready to recap all of the action for you from last night in the NBA. We're starting out with a whole lot of offense for both teams in Boston last night. The Celtics ended up on top thanks to 49 from Jayson Tatum. Locked On Celtics goes over that offensive explosion, and Locked On Heat is happy with their effort despite the loss.
Boston Celtics win a shootout with the Miami Heat. No one could miss, but the Celtics just made a couple more. I'm John Corrales here at the TD Garden after a 134-121 win. Jayson Tatum goes off for 49 points and carries the Celtics offense. But the story of this game is really that everyone was hitting shots. The Miami Heat hit 45% from three. The Celtics hit 49% from three. Both teams shot better than 50%. It's just a matter of the Celtics getting a couple of more three-pointers to fall and a couple more free throws, and they just can't stop scoring points. 134 points with 18 turnovers. That's hard to do, but the Celtics offense is efficient, and that's what's carrying them right now. Robert Williams is going to be coming back soon, but until then, this is an offense-first team, and the offense is carrying them to 5 straight wins here at home.
Well, the Heat hung in there until the end, losing to the Celtics 134-121. No answer for Jayson Tatum, who went off for 49 points, but the Heat offense did shoot 52% overall, 46% from three-point range, and had it to a 2-possession game with 4 minutes to go. But that's when Jayson Tatum made back-to-back threes to put the Celtics up 10 and put the game away, while the Heat's previously fiery offense fizzled out, scoring 0 points over the final 2.5 minutes. Still, on a night without Jimmy Butler, and with Jayson Tatum having one of the best scoring nights of the season, there's no reason the Heat should have been in this game at all. They have to feel good about how they measured up against what has been, through the first couple months of the season, the NBA's best team. Overall, the Heat are still trending in the right direction and showed tonight that they still have that same resolve that helped them push the Celtics to Game 7 of last season's Eastern Conference Finals. The good news for the Heat, Jimmy Butler expected back for Friday night's rematch. You're not going to want to miss that. For more on tonight's game, including what the Heat can learn and a surprising source of offense, check out Locked On Heat on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Not to be outdone, Devin Booker dropped 51 points, and he did it in just 3 quarters of play as Phoenix completely routed the Bulls pretty handily. Locked On Suns has all of the details.
51 points in 31 minutes as the Phoenix Suns decimate the Chicago Bulls. Devin Booker with a fantastic, incredible, amazing, elite performance. The Suns' home record in this building, 51 points, but most of all, 20 of 25 from the field. Running the clean here with Locked On Suns, coming to you after a Suns victory over the Bulls. And what more can you say? This guy just finished off a 40-plus point performance on Monday. His teammate, DeAndre Ayton, got Player of the Week last week. This team, without Chris Paul, just getting it done, and the Bulls had no shot to stop Booker. Caruso, Levine, Williams, it did not matter. Booker was a virtuoso today, and the Suns deserve all the success they're getting. 6 straight wins. For more on these Suns, listen to Locked On Suns wherever you get podcasts.
Coming up, Kevin Durant stays hot. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by BetOnline, the #1 spot for all of your online sports betting needs. No matter what sport you are interested in, whatever you want to bet on, you can do that at BetOnline, especially if you're interested in the World Cup. They're heading into the round of 16, or if you just want to do that regular bet on football every Sunday, just head over to betonline.net. It's where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Kevin Durant and the Nets continue to play their best basketball at the Barclays Center. 39 points from KD was enough to knock off the Wizards. Locked On Nets goes over Durant's impressive numbers lately.
Doug Norrie, Locked On Nets, coming at you following a 113-107 win by the Brooklyn Nets over the Washington Wizards. Kevin Durant is on an absolute heater. He drops 39 in this game. It was 45 the game before that against the Magic, 31 before that against the Blazers. Don't forget about the 36 against the Pacers. It's a 4-game stretch that is having Durant on an MVP-like tear. They also get contributions from Kyrie Irving, who puts in 27. Joe Harris wakes up for 4 for 6 from beyond the arc to give him 14. Without Ben Simmons, it didn't matter. The Nets were able to take this game against the Washington Wizards. They make it their 3rd win in a row. We are going to be breaking down the whole thing over on Locked On Nets.
Anthony Edwards stepped up for a Minnesota team playing without Karl Anthony Towns last night. Locked On Wolves is happy to go through that win over Memphis. And Locked On Grizzlies recaps a poor performance and some player ejections.
No Karl Anthony Towns, no problem for the Timberwolves as they beat the Memphis Grizzlies, snapping a 3-game losing streak. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Locked On Wolves podcast. And in the first game without Karl Anthony Towns, the Wolves beat their self-proclaimed rivals, the Memphis Grizzlies. Anthony Edwards, as it turns out, loves playing against the Grizzlies. Had a great first quarter, a really quiet middle part of the game, didn't make another basket until the 4th, and then came alive down the stretch, scoring 29 points on the night, plus 5 steals and 3 blocks. John Morant and Dillon Brooks were both ejected in the final 2 minutes of this game. They combined for 12 turnovers and were frustrated by apparently the officiating and the Timberwolves' aggressiveness in the paint. The Grizzlies almost doubled the Wolves in rebounding in this game, but the Wolves did enough defensively to muck things up, force 24 Grizzlies turnovers, and score a bunch of transition points, get to the line a bunch of the 4th quarter, and ultimately put this thing away. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves. We'll cover this game in its entirety on the post-game podcast.
It was an out-of-character defeat for the Memphis Grizzlies at the hands of the Minnesota Timberwolves on Wednesday night, not necessarily because the Grizzlies lost to Minnesota, that obviously has happened before, but the way that it occurred made things a little bit strange, both to the eye and to the keen observer of the numbers. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and John Morant got ejected in this game, but not before putting up one of his worst performances of the season, 7 turnovers in the game, only 6 assists. He didn't have it for much of the night. Same thing could be said of Dillon Brooks, who seemed to let the Minnesota crowd get the best of him at times, was not an efficient scorer, and was also tied for the team lead in a bad way in single game plus minus at a minus 14 in the minutes that he was on the floor. Not the best performance for the Grizzlies. Thankfully, it only counts for 1. Memphis is back at it on Friday against the Philadelphia 76ers. Hopefully they can wash this one, flush it, and move on to the next contest.
The Hawks were able to get their mojo back in Orlando and snap a 3-game losing streak. Locked On Hawks is happy to go over a win again. Locked On Magic goes over the defensive struggles against Atlanta's superstars.
Hello friends, my name is Brad Rowland, and we let the Hawks go on the road and knock off the Orlando Magic on this Wednesday evening, snapping a 3-game losing streak in the process. The Hawks led this game pretty much wire to wire in comfortable fashion. The Hawks did have 2 injuries that are of note going forward. DeAndre Hunter and John Collins both left the game and did not return for Atlanta, leaving the Hawks very, very short-handed at the forward spots. But Trae Young was fantastic. DeJounte Murray played very well. Clint Capella was fantastic as well for the Hawks, and they were able to hold off the hard-charging Magic in the second half despite the short-handed nature of the roster. We'll have a full breakdown of this game and much more on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, as the Orlando Magic welcome Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz back to the lineup, but fall the Atlanta Hawks 125-108. Look, there's a lot of really good energy from both Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony. It was good to have them back on the court, and it was very clear how much they're going to help this Orlando Magic team, especially on the offensive end. Orlando was able to flow pretty well offensively, and both Fultz and Anthony in their limited minutes made some major impacts. It's going to be a good thing, but there's obviously still some chemistry that needs to be built as well. The Magic were a little bit off on all aspects of the game, especially on defense, and that's what ultimately lost them this game in this one. Orlando's defensive rotations were just very, very poor. They were struggled on the offensive glass, giving up, I believe, 13 offensive rebounds and 20 second chance points, things that this team has been struggling with that point guards are not going to solve. Orlando just has to get back on the same page, and they have to play with a more consistent effort on the glass, especially on the defensive end, to have chances to win these games.
Cleveland did not have any trouble at all with Philly yesterday, and there was plenty of love to go around postgame with Locked On Cavs.
Hey, Chris Manning here. After the Cavs beat the Philadelphia 76ers 113-85 on Wednesday night in Cleveland. Good performance by Darius Garland. Good performance by Donovan Mitchell. Great performance, dare I say, Evan Dammarell from Evan Mobley?
Yeah, it's a great performance from Mobley. Big night for Mobley family in general is what I say. I think he's trying for the chart as well. But Mobley played awesome on both ends of the floor, on offense and defense, and both ends of the floor beats. But he did a really good job defending Joel Embiid and kind of frustrating the MVP candidate all night long. So this was a big win for the Cavs.
Not a competitive game. The Cavs had no Embiid to deal with in the fourth quarter because this game was out of reach. Rebound nicely for Cleveland after losing to Toronto on Monday. Next up will be Orlando on Friday. Maybe a little consistency, maybe a little Caris LeVert continuing his playoff listen. This could be a good, important one for the Cavs. Definitely one of their best performances of the season, considering no Jared Allen and all of that. For more, check out Locked On Cavs wherever you get your podcasts.
Pelicans big man Zion Williamson doing work on both ends of the court on Wednesday. That well-rounded performance allowed New Orleans to easily take care of the Raptors and give Locked On Pelicans a chance to talk about a win.
You saw a glimpse of how good this Pelicans team can be when they put the ball in the hands of Zion Williamson as they pummel the Toronto Raptors. I'm Jake Madison of Locked On Pelicans. This was the ideal version of the New Orleans Pelicans, and it's not complicated. Let Point Zion get the ball in his hands and good things happen. The Raptors tried double teaming him, and he kicked the ball out to open three-point shooters like Trey Murphy, who made 6 threes on the night. Zion had 5 assists in this one. They tried playing him one-on-one, and he turned the corner and blew past any defender in his way. 33 points on 12 of 15 shooting. It was a very complete game for the Pelicans franchise player, and it just opens everything up so much. New Orleans didn't even have Brandon Ingram or CJ McCollum in this one, and they won by 18. This is the best version of the Pelicans, and hopefully they're going to be able to replicate it with everyone healthy.
The Pacers laid an egg on the road last night in Sacramento. Locked On Pacers goes over one that looked like it was going to be really good on paper, but didn't live up to the billing.
Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, here inside the Golden One Center, where the Pacers just had far and away their most embarrassing loss this season. Wasn't even close. The Kings came in and kicked their butt wire to wire, 137-114, the final score in this game, with the Kings getting their lead up to 32 points in the fourth quarter of this game, and I thought this one would be much closer. Ton of energy in the arena. Kings had a huge crowd. A lot of Kings players talked about how impressive the crowd was in this game because it was Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield's return to Sacramento. Domantas Sabonis for the Kings going against the Pacers for the first time since he was traded. All that energy built up to a fun game, and yet it wasn't anything like that. The Kings just came in and asserted themselves the entire game. They looked amazing from start to finish. Their offense was spectacular. Their defense, their game plan to force Tyrese Halliburton left more often worked fantastically. And despite such an emotional night for both teams, the Kings were much better than the Pacers. We'll talk about the Pacers, their struggles this whole game, and more on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
That's all for today on Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On NBA and your team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.